Welcome to the Power of Her podcast. I'm Sinkule, and I'm so glad that you're here. So grab your coffee or your wine, get cozy, and let's dive in. Welcome to the Power of Her podcast. My name is Sinkule, and I am the CEO and founder of Digital Dawn. We are a marketing agency that helps women-owned businesses grow and scale online. And for those of you who maybe have been listening to my podcast in the past, you might be saying, gosh, what in the heck is this Power of Her? I thought you were running a podcast called the Ecomm Profit Podcast, which I did do. I ran the Ecomm Profit Podcast for about 5 years, starting in 2020. And I really use the Ecomm Profit Podcast as a platform to help people hear more about marketing, specifically in the e-commerce space, to understand all of the different facets of, e-commerce and packaging and distribution and marketing challenges. And then I started talking to people who really were brand owners who had experiences in the e-commerce space, growing their businesses. And I really started getting so interested in hearing more and more about their stories. And as I was looking at my data for the Ecomm Profit Podcast, what I realized is that the majority of the podcasts that got listened to the most were the ones that talked and shared people's stories of how they grew their businesses or overcame challenges or created solutions to a problem that they were currently having. And the majority of those people that my listeners were listening to or were curious about or who were asking me more questions about were all female entrepreneurs, female leaders, female business owners, which is the same thing as an entrepreneur, but people who were really interested in learning more about those stories, those challenges, and those struggles that they can relate to, and that they can often find comfort in hearing about how people, women specifically, overcame those to be successful in their life and career. And so as I was looking at what 2025 was going to hold for me as a business owner, I'm kind of changing a little bit of the direction that I'm going in as a business owner. And I'm starting to offer not only agency services, but also fractional CMO services. And I'm really wanting to explore this whole idea of the power of her. And so I got this idea in my head that I should rebrand and refocus the podcast specifically on telling stories of women who are in this space, who are able to share with you their life experiences, whether it's from being a very small business owner that grew into multi-million dollars, whether they're a leader in a corporate space and they have changed the way the industry happens, whether they are somebody who is a very prominent person in sports, or they're a prominent person in leadership, or they're a prominent person in whatever. I want to have conversations with these women and talk about the things that we know we all struggle with, which are things like, how the heck do you keep this all going when you've got kids, a business, a partner, like life in general? What happens if you get sick and you've got to do all of this? What happens if your family gets sick? I'm of a generation where I'm somewhere sandwiched between taking care of my semi-adult children and parents who are getting ready to age. I'm running a multi-million-dollar business. I'm struggling with, how do I balance all of this? So I'm at a different phase in life, but I know there's so many of you out there that have young kids that are trying to make it in the world. I know there's a lot of you whose children are gone, and now you're trying to figure out, what do you do with yourself in this sort of like, okay, I want to reinvent myself at a certain age. I want to know what I do when I grow up, or what do I want to be when I grow up? And this podcast has been redeveloped, redesigned, reformulated to really talk about the strength and the power of those women. My story itself is pretty unique. And for those of you who don't know, I had a corporate background and I worked for a very familiar US retailer, the one with the bullseye, for 17 years. And I did all things from being a store manager all the way up to a corporate senior executive where I was running teams of thousands of people, both in stores and at headquarters. I was managing billions of dollars of budget. I was running something that was bigger than I ever thought possible. I had two very small kids at home. I had just moved up to Minnesota to a new state. I had no support around me. My husband was working. I was trying to figure out how do I balance children they were 5 and 3 at the time. How do I balance this new corporate job, living an hour and 15 minutes one way from my full-time job? Do I get a nanny? How do I get to events? How do I balance this? How do I still be a really good wife? All of these things so influenced the person that I am today. And in 2014, I left that corporate job, one, because it was slowly killing me on the inside and causing a lot of trouble with my family and causing a lot of trouble with my marriage and made it really hard for me to balance everything. But I also recognized and realized that if I was going to work that hard for someone else, I could work that hard for myself. And so through a series of lots of events, the opportunity presented itself and I left. And I kind of figured out, gosh, what is it that I want to do with myself when I grow up? And I thought, hey, I want to be a consultant. So I started this business called Virtual Point Solutions, which is still my corporate business name. And I started consulting with smaller business owners. And when I say smaller, they were, somewhere like just in the million. Some of them were a couple million. Some of them were just like figuring out how to get started. But I wanted to take all of my corporate experience and sort of give that to these business owners in a way that I thought would be helpful. And I got asked a lot when I was working in my corporate job, like, if you were a business owner, what would you do? Or how does, this big company manage these types of things? And, I thought, okay, well, I can do this. I can consult. And so I started consulting for these companies. And what I found out very quickly was that these companies had no staff, no idea, no people that could help them actually implement any of these great strategic ideas I had on growing their business. And this wasn't just marketing stuff, right? Like these were things about operations, these were things about team, these were things about, all sorts of stuff, marketing being kind of my passion, but a lot of the things were, outside of marketing, just day to day, like how do you keep the boat afloat sort of stuff. And so we came up with these great strategies, like I said, but they never had anybody to actually implement them. So I thought, hey, I'll come up with a team that can implement these things and I'll start helping you manage this and put it in your business. Well, okay, fast forward now almost 11 years, and I have created this multi-million-dollar agency that I have now rebranded into Digital Dawn. And it's focused primarily on marketing your online businesses. And there has been a ton of transformation and a ton of growth and a lot of team changes and a lot of refocusing on my end, obviously rechanging and rebranding the name from Virtual Point Solutions to Digital Dawn, much more clever, right? And really understanding what it was and how I was going to be helping my clients continue to grow and profit in their business. And the best way I could do that and to sell to people online was through the marketing aspect of coming into their business and helping them and my team helping them with marketing. And that's how we got to this point. But one of the things that I've realized now, even more so as we move into this next phase of what Digital Dawn and the power of her podcast looks like, is that the world of marketing and the world of online business is changing so rapidly. And I want to hear these stories from women. I want to understand what their challenges are now in today's world, and whether it's the economy or the political atmosphere, or whether it's being a mother, or whether it's, having challenges with family or suppliers or marketing or whatever it might be. I want to hear what those challenges are and how these women have overcome them. Because I know my story is one that, if we were to sit and have drinks, you would hear a story that would really be pretty eye-opening to you. And I've only shared just a little bit of it here. But that's what the power of her podcast is really going to be about. It's going to be about sitting around, having conversations with people that you would love to have drinks with, and that you want to hear their stories, and that you want to understand what they are all about and how they have come to where they are. So join me on this journey. This is going to be an exciting new adventure for me to understand and interview people and hearing about their stories. And if there's somebody specifically that you think I should interview for the power of her, please let me know. Drop a link, email me, find me on social media, and tell me, because I want to share these challenges and these success stories that we all are going through, trying so hard to run our businesses and to be better women in the world. And the power of her is going to do that. And I love the name. I love the new branding. I love the way that this is falling into place. And I think this is going to be an amazing adventure for all of us to learn about the power that women have over their own bodies, choices, themselves, and their businesses. And I think this is going to be an amazing adventure. So thank you for sticking around with me. Thank you for listening. The Ecomm Profit Podcast is still there for you to go back and listen to, but I hope that you join me on this new adventure where we do these interviews, and that you really learn and are inspired by these stories that I'm going to be telling with these other amazing women. Thank you so much for listening, and I can't wait to explore this new adventure.